The announcement that President Trump has formally authorized CIA covert operations in Venezuela marks a turning point in U.S.-Venezuelan relations, what was once largely a standoff of rhetorical threats and sanctions. This came at the very same time as United States bombers approached Venezuela and they were forced to scramble fighter jets to prepare for possible invasion. Clearly, President Trump has a plan to bring down the Maduro regime, and his plan to create instability in the region is one that could lead towards that objective. From the American perspective, the rationale is straightforward. Venezuela has long served as a transit point for narcotics, especially fentanyl and other deadly synthetic drugs that reach U.S. streets. The Trump administration argues that the United States needs to do everything in their power to counter the speed, stealth, and deadly efficiency of drug cartels operating with impunity under the Maduro regime's protection. By declaring certain Venezuelan-linked traffickers or cartels unlawful combatants and authorizing CIA countermeasures, the administration is asserting that it must treat this as more than a criminal problem. This has become a security war with covert action, targeted strikes, and intelligence operations. We have already seen recent U.S. military actions. The situation has already escalated, and at least 5 strikes on vessels in the Caribbean, allegedly tied to Venezuelan drug trafficking, have killed approximately 27 individuals across multiple operations. These strikes, carried out in international waters, are presented as just the first phase. Trump is choking off maritime routes, then moving to impose pressure from air and land. That has included deployment of naval assets, submarines, and warships, as well as F-35 stealth fighters to Puerto Rico to support operations in the southern Caribbean. From Trump's perspective, he feels this is principled use of American power to defend the homeland. He wants to restore law and order and prevent fentanyl deaths in the United States, and this is a promise that he made in the 2024 campaign for president. Venezuela, unsurprisingly, is scrambling to respond. In the face of U.S. jets approaching nearby airspace, Caracas is reportedly scrambling its own fighter aircraft to intercept or surveil U.S. military planes suspected of probing Venezuelan defenses. The Venezuelan Air Force is sending up its interceptors in what amounts to an overt show of defensive posture. In recent weeks, Venezuela has also conducted military exercises in densely populated Caracas suburbs and across border states. The regime frames this as defending national sovereignty from U.S. aggression. But in reality, they are defending the illegal flow of drugs into the United States, while trying to cling to power even though there are major questions about Venezuelan elections. Venezuela is now compelled to respond to the show of force from the United States. Maduro feels that he must act stronger in the air to dissuade or complicate U.S. plans. Venezuela will likely posture on the ground to show the United States that there could be consequences, but those efforts risk some level of miscalculation by Venezuela. On the diplomatic front, relations have entered a new era of confrontation. Venezuela is unlikely to engage in meaningful negotiation now, viewing any talks as weakness or entrapment. Instead, Caracas will lean heavily on international institutions. Maduro and his ministers are likely to accuse Washington of planning regime change under the guise of counter-narcotics, and to mobilize internal propaganda to cast the United States as an external invader seeking the nation's oil, resources, and sovereignty. From the U.S. side, however, much depends on managing the balance between necessary force and overstepping legal or public boundaries. The decision to authorize CIA covert actions, especially when paired with overt military strikes, invites intense scrutiny over legality, oversight, and the risk of unintended escalation. However, the Trump administration is prepared to show credible intelligence, along with their very own strict rules of engagement and ultimate transparency. Trump has pledged that this would be a disciplined campaign to avoid civilian collateral damage or international condemnation, while at the very same time ending the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Venezuelan generals or security officials who depend on the narco-trafficking income may start hedging their bets. It's possible they will start shifting allegiance towards opposition or negotiating quietly with the United States. But risks are high. Venezuela may miscalculate, and if they start scrambling fighters in a dangerously close proximity to the US jets and participating aerial engagement, then it could drag the two sides into open conflict. Some Latin American countries nearby might be anxious about the situation developing between the US and Venezuela, fearing this expansion of US power in the hemisphere and pushing for mediation or sanctions against Washington. But that seems unlikely, at least for now. Here's the good news for the people in the United States that have been waiting for the flow of drugs from the cartels to end. After decades of weak diplomacy from other presidents, the Trump administration is finally showing resolve. It is no longer content to allow narco cartels funded by the Venezuelan state to poison our American people. It is asserting that sovereignty does not extend to allowing drug cartels to operate freely across borders, and now President Trump is ready and prepared to act decisively to defend the United States, its citizens, and regional order. If Washington can execute operations surgically, avoid major civilian blowback, maintain legal and congressional legitimacy, and prevent escalation into full war, it may fundamentally shift power dynamics in Venezuela and across Latin America. Will this end the Maduro regime in Venezuela? Only time will tell. There are many possible outcomes from this, but here's the most important thing. President Trump is defending the American people from narcotics, which have killed countless people over the last 4 years while Biden was in office. Looking ahead, the path forward for both the United States and Venezuela is now being shaped not by negotiation tables or diplomatic niceties, but by raw leverage. The United States, under President Trump's assertive doctrine, has seized the initiative. The question now is whether Venezuela will continue to escalate in defiance. For the United States, the path forward is to maintain discipline. The show of strength must be sustained but not reckless. Precision matters, legitimacy matters, and consistency matters. If the US keeps squeezing militarily while offering a narrow but clear path towards de-escalation, then the Maduro regime may fall and the United States could achieve its ultimate goal. Ultimately, there are only three possible endings. Maduro either gives way and his regime collapses, Venezuela reforms under pressure from the US, or a full-scale conflict erupts. The Trump strategy is designed to force the first two while avoiding the third. The coming months will determine whether Venezuela bends or breaks. Either way, the President of the United States is leading us into an era of peace through strength. And he stopped 8 wars in 8 months, and he's looking to stop a 9th one from starting.